Hi Chris, how are you?
Good afternoon, Rod. Yes, I'm well. Here we are on the hottest day of the year, I believe, to get the weather in early.
Yeah, it's really nice out there, isn't it? It's properly toasty.
It is beautiful. I've got my blinds down to keep the sun out, and I've got the door open to get some air in, which is lovely.
That's very nice. I am in the house by myself, so I've shut all the patio doors and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully the dog won't come trundling in at some point. And if it gets darker, we might be knackered. And I will set up in advance to YouTube viewers. I apologise for my camera this week. There's nothing I can do about the odd motion.
I think I should apologise for last week as I was feeling unwell, but you did an amazing job in the edit.
Yeah, if any coughs made it through the audio or the video, I can only apologise. But Chris gave me hard work. It's the longest I've ever had to edit for last week.
I apologise. Normally we do it in one take, don't we? We're normally pretty good, but I was not feeling very well last week, but much better this week, which is good news.
I mean, well done for getting through it, and a bit inside baseball for those that care. Chris tries to mute his microphone when he goes away to cough, so thought he was muting his microphone, but we couldn't actually use that recording because he forgot to unmute it, or mute it, whichever way around it was, when he came back, so we lost about 20 minutes of footage, audio footage.
Audio.
So we had to recover the audio from the video stream, which meant everything was very slightly in a different place. So it was a bit of a struggle last week.
But you did a great job. It was not easy what you were left with.
Well, it's all right. It's fine. It's all for the thrill of the game or something like that.
So we get into episode 168, and it's the 11th of April, and it's still 2025.
It is still 2025. Okay. So diving straight into follow-up, and if I can figure out how to make this pop-up go away by clicking that. The news of the week, really, in tech, as in all things, has been Trump's tariffs. Will he, won't he? He did, briefly, and then he didn't. And then they're kind of ongoing, because China, I think, is currently, at the time of recording, on a 124% tariff from the United States, and they said they're going to add a bunch more on their side as well. So there is an ongoing trade war between America and China, but not so much the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think everything's just in a bit of limbo at a time when we don't need more limbo, is what I would suggest. But hopefully it will settle down and we get back to some normality at some point.
Yeah, I hope so. And, you know, there's two stories Trump related, and I immediately put up the first one wrong for the YouTube viewers. But speaking about, you know, the tariffs and the Trump administration affecting many of the things that we talk about in this podcast, it affects tech probably more than anything, because so many goods that are what we discuss here are affected by, you know, trade from China. And so far, those in the United Kingdom and the EU and more sensible parts of the world, maybe with our tariffing, we're all affected by the United States tariffs, but America's going to be doubly so. And as the story sort of broke and didn't break over the course of the week, the sort of first thing that most Americans were probably going to feel was the Switch 2 announcement that wasn't going to be able to be available for pre-orders.
Yeah, I was quite surprised by that. So obviously, I think we reported on it briefly last week. Nintendo said, we're not going to do the Switch 2. We're just going to wait a moment. So there's no pre-orders in America. It's so hard to get a pre-order anyway because you have to hit all of Nintendo's criteria, and it's not easy to know whether you're in or you're out. Spoiler, I did not get an email from Nintendo, which I assume you didn't. So I was half expecting one, but I'm a little gutted I didn't get it. So I think we just have to wait for retail to get them. I'm sure there'll be a pre-order with retail at some point.
Well, one of the fringe things about this is, of course, is the rest of the world might get stuff A, sooner, and B, possibly slightly cheaper if they're not able to count on the American market for as many sales as they might once have had. I am not an economist. I don't even pretend to be an economist. But there is going to be a bit of backlash and swing with this kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays all out. But certainly the first one I saw, Nintendo was affected. There was a story about Apple, and we'll talk about it in a minute, what Apple's reaction to the potential tariffs was on the day they were meant to come in. And we're going to talk about this company as well. Framework, another company, were affected by, which we've talked about in the past and we'll talk about again later today, were also affected. They are an American company who have equipment manufactured in Taiwan, frankly. And Taiwan was only on a 10% tariff as opposed to the, whatever it is, at this particular minute between China and America. And they were affected too, and said their cheapest products would be affected and not be able to order by United States customers.
Right, okay. I must confess, I've purposely not tried to keep up with it because I think it's just flip-flopping so much.
Yeah, the tariffs have really had quite a significant impact on tech companies, and we were just saying, I think, that, you know, Framework are obviously they're not going to sell their cheapest products to the American market. And they had pre-orders open for another product, which we're going to talk about later, and they were delayed for the American market as well by a couple of days. So they're already, in effect or not, having an effect on the American consumer.
But there's also a problem, though, isn't there? I think if you pre-order something now and the tariffs are, maybe they're not in effect, but what happens in 3 months' time when you're about to receive your product? It could be a car, and then the tariffs kick in, and it doesn't matter when you made the pre-order. It matters when it lands in the country or you make the final payment. Is it then going to kick in, and then you're going to be burnt with it? The whole thing's horrible, isn't it? It's just really bizarre. And are people rushing out now to buy cars, tech, because they're worried what the future might look like because it's so uncertain?
Well, I think they are. It's the economic uncertainty by all this is really just it's got to be awful if you're a company that's sort of low margin. Apple can eat a certain amount of margin on their products because they do make such margin on it. But you can't think, I don't know, Razer is probably quite a good example of a company that probably doesn't have vastly high margins, probably a little bit more than an LG or one of the cheaper Chinese brands. But you can only go so far. Framework are quite a small company with quite a niche market. They will not have the overheads that an Apple does. So it's got to be really uncertain for them. And like you said, when you talked about cars, the UK is pausing. Not that we own Jaguar Land Rover anymore, but some of them are still made here, and we're pausing shipments to America based on the 25% automotive tariffs. This is already having an impact on worldwide economies. Yeah,
and I don't think any of us saw it coming quite like this. And with all the flip-flopping as well, I don't think that's been terribly healthy.
No. Not at all. Another thing that's not very healthy is Trump really seems to have it in for academia. So this was a story that he's continuing to claw back any sort of funding or tariffs for United States universities, particularly attacking the sciences. All sorts of grants are put on hold. All universities are being targeted by this. And this is sort of compounding his already sort of paused grants to the National Institutes of Health and other things that are going on in America. So what you're seeing is sort of a multilateral attack against science and academia across the United States, and the brain drain on that, as we've talked about with scientists already leaving the United States to go to France and to go to other countries, that short term might not have that big an effect, but long term, how can you continue to lead the world in technology, genetics, medicine, fabrics, oil production, pick your industry, steel production, things he wants to do, that sort of focus on we want to become a production economy again. We want to make things again at the expense of everything else. It's not going to be very long before that bites.
I'd agree with that. You would have thought they'd want to do both things. We want to produce some things in our country where it makes sense to. Equally, we need to import and export things, again, where it makes sense. But also, we want to have an eye on the future, whereas, I don't know, it seems very short-termist that the focus is on, let's make things, we should make things here. But why is there not a broader scope? I find it very odd, I think, and the sudden knee-jerk reactions. There's just lots of uncertainty, and this is not good, is it? It's not good for anybody. Are these? Maybe we're wrong. Maybe in 6 months from now, we will look back and go, "Yeah, he got it all right." But I don't know. It doesn't feel like it.
And even if he has got it all right, he'll change his mind again tomorrow. I mean, the biggest part about this is the university sector is under threat across the world. We have seen similar things in the United Kingdom. But if you look at this, he's taking $4 million away from Princeton. Princeton, not an insignificant university that nobody's ever heard of. It's an Ivy League university. But all of this comes to $700 million to $1 billion. And that's going to affect courses, that's going to affect research, that's going to affect small and large research projects in the wake of everything else that's going on. So I just think it's a very, very determined attack on education, infrastructure, science. And the whole thing it makes me very uncomfortable, I got to say.
Yeah, it's the same. And it's just, I feel for the people that are at the coalface because they're the ones that are going to be impacted by this. And there's all that uncertainty for them.
And the students of tomorrow, because there's going to be a gap in who can educate them, what they're being educated in, and what courses they're allowed to pick. So the ongoing impacts of this won't be felt. They'll be felt pretty immediately by some grant holder somewhere, but they'll be felt down the line by potentially an awful lot of people.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's baffling, isn't it?
It is baffling.
And what these people are going to leave uni and become manufacturing people now because that's what America's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, is that what they've got in line? Instead of sitting behind a desk, being an analyst or being an administrator or being something like that, they're going to have to be down a coal mine or, building an automobile out of presumably not computerized parts because they can't import any.
It does baffle your mind, doesn't it?
It really does. Something that doesn't baffle my mind quite so much is how quickly Apple reacted to the tariffs. The legend is, according to Chance Miller at 9to5 Mac, that they flew 4 planes filled to the gunnels with iPhones to try and beat the tariffs before they came into effect. We'll say what you like about Tim Cook, and we've said a fair bit about Tim Cook on this podcast. He's an operations man.
He is an operations man. 4 planes, though, doesn't feel like a lot. I know that's a lot of phones. That's a lot of money on a plane, isn't it, in essence? But you'd have thought maybe they'd, I don't know, 4 planes doesn't feel like it was going to last that long in a country that size.
Yeah, I mean, it's not peak iPhone season. And I was thinking about this, actually, that it's not peak iPhone season. Most people that want an iPhone will have one. There'll always be the cases where you drop one and you want to replace it. Maybe there's people that buy them late in the cycle so they get the best possible deal on a new phone. There's all sorts of reasons that you might, partake or not partake of this kind of thing. I was thinking of the chilling effect of this down the line, though. All right, it's all very well having a phone in the stores now, but all of our rumours are pointing to Apple having foldable phones that cost $2,000, $2,500, $3,000. If you stick your X% tariff on top of that as well, what consumers are going to buy them?
That is a massive problem, isn't it? You could end up with an American company can't sell phones to American customers because the tariffs make it unreasonable to do it.
Yeah, it's a whole consideration, and a company as streamlined as Apple is with the supply line of the factories they work with. We've already talked about them moving some production out of China into Taiwan, out of Taiwan into India, Brazil, all of which, by the way, are companies looking at Apple quite closely for their business practices. It's kind of becoming a perfect storm for them. But I mean, back to the point of this one is, it's interesting to see a great American company being targeted by the American government effectively in this way. And you do wonder if the flip-flopping on the tariffs are because of people like Tim Cook and billionaire friends having a word with Donald going, you are going to kill our business.
Yeah, that is it. You're going to kill it. Stop it. Maybe that's why there's been so much flip-flopping.
Maybe. Another thing that's been flip-flopping that we have talked about repeatedly on this podcast is Microsoft's screen recording feature, now called Copilot Vision. It wasn't called that before, was it? It was called something else?
I can't remember what it was called before, but this was... Microsoft, it seemed to be putting Copilot in front of everything, don't they?
They do. This is the feature Recall. Microsoft Recall, that's what it was called.
No, it's not Recall.
Well, it's pretty much the same thing, isn't it? Copilot Vision is going to watch your screen. It's going to give you advice and updates. Copilot app will ship.
But Microsoft Recall was more about this is everything you've done today kind of thing and recording what you've done, whereas this is more looking at what you're doing and giving you advice on what you're doing.
Yeah, but in order to look at what you're doing, it's recording your screen.
It does feel like they've taken the same tech and tried to repurpose it in a proactive, positive way rather than the looking back, reactive way.
Yeah. Copilot Vision will be able to do things like coach you through using Adobe Photoshop features or analyze your photos and web pages you're looking at. I got to see an early version, this is from the article, early version of Copilot Vision on Windows at Microsoft's 50th anniversary party last week, where the AI assistant guided me through a game of Minecraft and helped optimize settings in Microsoft's Clipchamp video editor. No thank you. No thank you very much.
I don't even know what Clipchamp editor is. It sounds like Apple Clips, but I can see some benefits, like apparently you're going to be able to use it in Photoshop. So you're trying to do a gradient fill in Photoshop, and it can see what you're trying to do and hopefully point you in the right direction. I can see some benefits there. It's like having a tutor, isn't it? But would I want this on all the time, watching everything I'm doing? Not really. Thank you very much. So, but Apple's going to do something similar, isn't it? Where it'll be more aware in future, and we've got an article on it coming up actually. Future Siri, of being able to be more cognizant of what you're actually doing at the moment on the screen.
I mean, that was one of the things they promised in this sort of raft of updates, wasn't it? Content awareness or context awareness for what it was that you were doing. I am not sure consumers are going to love this, because where does the data go? Is it all being run on your PC? Is the local language model being run on your PC? Or is this Copilot that sends your stuff off to the clouds?
I would imagine most consumers don't really care.
It just makes me so uncomfortable with what's happening with your
I
data.
I agree with you, but I think the majority of people don't even give it a second thought.
I don't know that that's true. We haven't seen Windows 11 uptake really take off. I think what we've seen is the death of the approaching doom of Windows 10 coming along and forcing people into Windows 11.
Yeah.
This will be obviously so. There's not been features particularly in Windows 11 that consumers have gravitated to. In fact, I think there's been even outside of my little techie bubble, there is more of a gravitation to what's that Linux thing, what's going on with Macs that don't record you and don't do these kinds of things. I think there will be a backlash about this kind of stuff. It's different corporately, where you can guarantee, or you've got agreements in place with Microsoft that data is not leaving your corporate demilitarized zone, for want of a better word. But for consumers, I do my banking. Is this thing looking at my banking while I'm doing it? I'm speaking to my mum. Is it, what is going on exactly? Please explain to me why you need to look at my web browser while I'm having a video conference with my mum.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, but I think most people won't even give it a second thought because they don't now, do they? Do people really think about it?
No, I suppose that's true. They quite happily just stuff things in the mouth of Facebook or TikTok or feed the algorithm.
And can they do their thing, and people don't see that their data is the thing they are paying with, so it's their currency, isn't it?
At some point, are we going to live in a post data sharing world where you and I will just give up on this and think everybody's got all of our stuff anyway?
Then there is that. You've reached the point of it doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't matter. You literally are just food for the algorithm. Something that's not food for the algorithm is our Apple restricted data, and I've forgotten the exact thing for it. What was it? What's the name of the thing that Apple are taking off as?
Advanced data protection.
Data protection. There you go. Thank you. Advanced data protection. This was all a bit weird, wasn't it? Apple weren't even allowed to say that they'd been served a notice as part of the Advanced Data Protection because of the Investigatory Powers Act. Anyway, in the background, all sorts of legal shenanigans have been going on. And this was a story in The Guardian this week about the UK Home Office losing its attempt to keep the battle with Apple secret. So this is going to have to be talked about, maybe not in open court, but it's going to be talked about in court. So we'll get to see what's going on in this case. And I think this is quite important for us as consumers and for Apple as a company, that you know what is going on behind the scenes with attempts to access or control your data on a state level.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't good that they're trying to hide it. I mean, it's a bit of an awkward place to be, isn't it? Apple are doing this thing, the UK are doing this thing, but they're not talking about it. What I found interesting when you go into advanced data protection. Oh, it does still. Sorry, I thought the message had gone away, but it's still there, saying you can't turn it on if you've got a new device. I don't like any of it. I don't like how it's gone around. I don't like how the UK government are trying to do this in the back door. I don't like the outcome that now I can't have advanced data protection, which is something I did turn on, because why wouldn't I? It causes me no inconvenience, but is way better, and our government doesn't want us to have that.
Yeah, it seems so. There's an interesting quote in this. Ross McKenzie, a data protection partner at the law firm Adelshaw Goddard, said despite the ruling, it was highly unlikely there'd be any in-depth revelations of the Home Office's case for accessing Apple user data. But something will come out of it. Courts are a lot more open than just a governmental agency, particularly a secretive governmental agency talking to a big tech firm. So I think this is positive. I think hopefully we'll hear a little bit more detail about what's going on. And again, as with all things technological, this will be the tip of the iceberg for what other countries would like to do with this kind of data.
Yeah, I'd agree, because you can see what will happen here. If it goes through and our government get what they want, other governments will follow, won't they?
They will. Shall we crack into the news?
Let's do it.
So when we were talking about our 50 years of Microsoft last week, one of the stories we left out was there were actually protests from Microsoft employees during the Copilot presentations and during the 50 years sort of celebrations. Twice executives at Microsoft were heckled by people within the crowd, effectively accusing Microsoft of allegedly supporting the Israeli government in its prosecution of the war effort against citizens of Gaza and Palestine, effectively claiming that Microsoft had blood on its hands for allowing tactical simulations to be run on Azure web servers and Microsoft platforms and many terabytes of data related to the Israeli government being on there. So, I mean, it's not a great look for Microsoft to be accused of those things, particularly by its own employees. And this is just a story that actually made it as far as Rock, Paper, Shotgun, a gaming blog, about the firing of those staff involved. And I just think it's a fascinating story when your own employees have to stand up in front of an international audience at a birthday party, to point out these kinds of things.
It's quite a thing to have done, to, have that ability to, like you say, at a birthday party, stand up and accuse them. And then obviously they lost their job the next week, which is interesting. I have no idea what the legal grounds for that would be. But they obviously, they definitely weren't towing company line.
Yeah. I mean, it's from an article, it's based on an article from the Associated Press claiming that the Israeli military's use of Microsoft computing services and OpenAI technologies has skyrocketed to nearly 200 times higher since the surprise attack on Israel by Hamas and other Palestinian militants on the 7th of October 2023. So there's all manner of interviews with current and former members of Microsoft. There's talking about what they're doing with the data. And I think this story sort of ties in quite well with what we just had in follow-up, where the use of the data that's captured about you can go to all sorts of unforeseen things. So if you've got, smartphone data, you're trying to track civilians and military forces around the world, you need big data in order to help you with that. And this is just an example of how that can be sort of prosecuted.
Yeah, agreed. But fair play to them for making a stand on something they believe in.
It's very principled, that's for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, moving along, we've got a little story we can't get away from him, can we? From Donald, who, as we already talked about, wants to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. One of the things he believes can be brought back to the United States is Apple should be able to make iPhones there. As we talked about last week, they can't even make trucks in the United States with 100% United States parts. They need parts from other parts of the world. The iPhone is one of the most complex machines I think you could buy at sort of mass-produced scale. Obviously, airliners and things like that are very complex, but not on a scale of miniaturization that you see in a modern smartphone. And I just think this is an amazing perspective that in 20 minutes you're going to be producing iPhones in the United States.
Interesting, as you phrased it, they're bringing back iPhones. They never made iPhones in America, and I don't get the fascination with everything's got to be built in country. Like, don't get me wrong, I am a big supporter of supporting local where I can. I support all my local shops and local industry. So I kind of get it, but at some point, this feels a little bit backwards. Of why is this such a priority for the current administration? I don't think it wasn't something that came around in the last, when he was last in post. So why is it such a thing now to bring more back into America? I don't really understand. Are we going to end up with more? Maybe one of the upsides is more countries are going to produce more in region, and therefore they're going to have more jobs for people for manufacturing, and you're going to end up not having cars that are built in different countries and shipped over. So that could work, but equally it could go the other way. If companies will go, well, I'm not going to bother with that market anymore because I can't import you a car into your country, therefore you're not going to be able to buy the BMW i4 anymore in the UK, for example, or you're going to build them all locally, and then you're going to have to tool up. And I don't know. I find the whole stance mind blowing.
It's really weird. I mean, from the Mac Rumors article here, that there's more than 50 countries involved in sourcing components for the iPhone. That's quite a chunk of the world. I mean, that's about a third of the world that you're involved with there for getting components in for it. The reason China is the place where lots of these devices are manufactured is kind of it's an amazing story in one way, that the country decided it was going to gen up to do this kind of manufacturing, as other countries, ourselves included, moved towards sort of a more service-oriented industry. China, therefore, had cheap labor and didn't care so much about the toxic waste, for want of a better word, that was a consequence of this high technology manufacturing. Copper slurry and things like that are generated as a consequence of making smartphones and making microchips and printed circuit boards. It's quite a horrible thing for your environment. So, of course, America, Britain, and the EU were happy to ship that problem to another country that, as a consequence, had to deal with that and, built up the know-how how to build these things cheaply and at scale and at a quality level that was good enough for the rest of the world. And fair play China, they've done it. There's lots of reasons that that's bad for the Chinese people, and without getting into the politics of it all, it can't be great to have that kind of waste going around, and potentially your workers not being treated in the best possible circumstances. But we are, and that's true in Vietnam for garment manufacturing and all around the world. So it's not as simple as we're just going to make it here. the parts still need to come from elsewhere. The raw materials still need to come from elsewhere. Canada serves the United States a huge amount in things like simple things like lumber, never mind complex things that you need to build printed circuit boards like lithium and things like that. So you're never going to be able to 100% make it. It's not like farming. It's not like you can just grow potatoes and you can't grow iPhones in fields of Iowa.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you're right. Farming's a great example, isn't it? It's a lot more in country to a point. Obviously, there's lots of import and export that goes on. But yeah, you're right. That's a much easier problem to solve. I find the whole thing a little bit baffling. And
ironically, China is a big importer of United States farming products. They buy food from America.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. They probably buy fashion. Well, I guess they don't buy fashion. They use a lot of American companies, brands like Apple and I guess Nike and what have you, manufacture abroad, don't they?
Yeah, but why? I don't get it. Anyway, moving on. There's also a second link to an article in the show notes from the Wall Street Journal about what goes into an iPhone, what the components are, how much it costs to make it versus, bringing all the bits and pieces in. It's just a fascinating, really well done article by Joanna Stern, because of course it is, going through all the components and what it costs and what it will then cost with a tariff on board. So an iPhone 16 Pro minus overheads. The bill total is $549.73 with a tariff, as they were projected to be at 54%. That adds another $296.86 to that. So we're at 100+% now. So it's going to be even more. How long Apple can shield a customer from that, even with the overhead? What is an iPhone 16 Pro? £999, I think. I want to say.
For the one they're showing here, it's $1,100 because they've got the 256.
So you've got a bit of margin you can eat up there, but very quickly you can't afford to eat that. So I just think this is a very well done thing.
I think it's great. It's a great visual as well, and a breakdown of all the constituent parts. But the tariff, is circa 6% the build cost of your device. That's quite an uplift.
Yeah. It is. It really is. I quite like there's a live stock ticker here. I hadn't noticed that previously as well. Apple stock has been ticking down in quite a volatile way since we started the podcast.
Yeah, it's all stocks are all over the show, aren't they?
Yeah. Something else that's all over the shop and makes me deeply uncomfortable is the story that broke in The Guardian this week about a murder prediction tool to identify the people most likely to kill. So what this is, and the Ministry of Justice have very quickly come out and said this isn't a real thing, honestly, is looking at potential precursors or identifying factors for people that are likely to carry out murder. So the first thing you'd think about with something like this is Minority Report. I don't know if you've seen the film Minority Report.
Yeah, I have actually seen the film, and that's exactly what I was going to say to you. It sounds all a bit Tom Cruise.
And with my sort of data analyst-y hat on one level you can see where they're coming from. We try and identify precursors of disease. So a good example of something like this would be people from more deprived areas that are less well off with higher crime rates tend to have worse health than those that come from better educated families from slightly bit richer neighborhoods that, for lots of reasons, better access to healthcare, better knowledge and education, yada, yada, yada. You would expect people, if you want to be well, be rich. I mean, that's always been an axiom. So you can see that. The precursors for that are, you've got better likelihood. Not that you can't break out of that sort of spiral, but coming from a better area tends to lead to better health. The thinking with this would be, well, maybe if you went to jail for 5 years and this happened, or there was some sort of sign of you failing your SATs or something before we got to it, maybe that's an indicator of murder. So you profile the people that have carried out crimes, you look at data points in their past that led them to that, and you start to generate some sort of algorithm to see if that thing. Now that is the problem when you're looking at murderers are what percent, what data points are you putting into that? Are you taking into account what are murders, what are road traffic accidents, what the circumstances were, was it involving money? There's lots of things you'd never have a data point to be able to satisfy the algorithm. So it is slightly chilling, but what I'm hoping is it is just some random intellectual exercise that actually made it outside into a story.
There's a lot of nuance in here, isn't there?
There is a lot of nuance in here.
I think that's the key, isn't there? Like, you can look obviously at legacy data and do some trend analysis is really what you're looking at. And you're looking then at future trends of that person. Will they be a murderer? But I don't know. I find this. I think one of the quotes is it's a bit dystopian, and I would concur with that statement.
Yeah, and just to bring it to the health word, world, you've got things like this where traumatic brain injury could be a potential cause of violent crime. So there's been a couple of studies involving this where if you have loss of consciousness brain injury as a child, there's a higher incidence of people who have loss of conscious brain injury who wind up in prison.
Wow.
Now, which is pretty stark, but kind of held up by the evidence to a certain degree. And I've seen Australian studies that are similar. No comments about Australia, please. But you can kind of see how these things run away with you, where you start to look at one thing and you find, and it's often said for financial things as well, correlation is not causation. Just because you've found a factor that could influence this, it's not the whole answer, and it's very simplistic to how somebody ends up carrying out a crime or ends up in jail, reducing it all back to one factor. So I think you need to be very careful with this kind of data and this kind of research.
Yeah, I completely agree. Interesting we're doing it here in the UK.
Well, any country with data does it. That's the long and the short of it. And we've got better data than many because we're quite good at capturing that kind of stuff. But you can guarantee that less salubrious regimes are absolutely trying to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, I understood. Maybe this is why UK government want access to all our iPhone data.
So they can put us in jail before we commit the crime. We're back to Minority Report. Good film, by the way. Worth checking out.
Yeah, it's probably worth a rewatch.
I think so. Tell us about this iPhone 17 leak.
So this is a feature not designed for me, I think. So there's a leak saying that the iPhone 17 Pro is going to have a software feature that the other phones won't get. And if Rod scrolls down a little bit, you'll see a nice little picture of it. Basically, you'll be able to use the back and the front camera at the same time. So that, I guess this is good for social media, isn't it? You can film something and get the reaction in a wanna. So it kind of makes sense. You could have, I'm walking into a room and I've been surprised. Here's what the room looks like. This is what I can see. And then obviously here's my reaction. So it's quite a cool feature. I'm assuming this new phone is going to have some processing power to be able to do that, because obviously, to run 2 streams at once and be able to record them, it's going to be high quality and save it down. It's quite a neat feature. It's probably not something I'm ever going to use.
Yeah, the iPhone can do this. I think it's just they need to switch it on in the app. Yeah, I don't think this is a feature for me, but my daughters, and I can't remember the name of the app. Yes, I can. Be Real. There was an app that swept the App Store a while ago, and you took a photograph and it used both cameras. It showed what you were looking at now and what you were doing right now, and you had to take a picture twice in the day, and you shared it. And
that was quite a thing for a while, wasn't it? Of what you're doing right now kind of thing, and you'd share a picture of what your world looked like.
Yeah, exactly that. So fair enough. It should be relatively easy to do this. Let's face it. The phone, the chip that's in these phones is very analogous to what we're recording this podcast on, and I'm recording about 3 different video streams right now, so it should be more than capable of doing this.
Yeah, Apple are so good at this sort of thing. I think this will be quite a smooth feature, and it's only until I read that article I was like, oh yeah, we can't do that now.
I found that quite surprising, actually, that it wasn't a thing you could already do, but there you go.
Agreed. I've never looked for it though, I must say.
It's probably not exactly. We're not the market. We're not the demographic, I don't think, Chris.
No, we're not.
Something we might be the demographic for is cool monitors, because you and I both like a cool monitor that does interesting things. We're monitor curious, I think it's fair to say. And I came across this one on my travels this week. It's from Dell. It's the Dell UltraSharp 27 4K Thunderbolt hub monitor U2725QE, as always with Dell. Very snappy names.
Love the names.
But this is actually quite a nice, compelling device, I've got to say. It's 4K, which is good. It's not a ridiculous amount of money.
Depends what you're going to use it for. As you and I have discussed, not great for gaming.
Unless you've got a really, really good video card.
Yeah, fair.
So if you've got like a Radeon 4000 series and above, NVIDIA 4000 series and above, they will drive a 4K screen at high refresh rate, at high brightness, relatively easily with good HDR. If what you want is a lot of screen real estate, 4K is good for that, and even a fairly low-end computer will support something like that. So I think it's okay. This is interesting for that exact scenario, because not only is it 4K and 27 inches, but it has 120 hertz refresh rate, and that's really quite good for gaming. It's not the best for gaming, but
that is
it's pretty
good,
good.
Isn't it? Yeah, no, that's good. I actually do have an older version of this screen, which is what I use when I go up to the house with my Mac Mini or my iPad. But do you know what? It's actually a pretty good screen. It hasn't got all the features of this one. It is 4K, but it's probably 60 hertz if I remember. And it has got a bit of the hub on it, which I think you're showing now, loads of ports. And it actually looks quite nice for a Dell monitor, to be fair to them. So I think this is a great screen.
So I think this is great for a couple of reasons. One is I like my KVM. I like the ability to plug lots of computers into a screen and be able to flip between them seamlessly, as my Benk that I'm looking at here does now too as well. But this has a couple of USB-C ports. There's Thunderbolt 4 ports on there as well. One thing I really like about it is they're quite hard to get at, the ports under a screen. So this is a little box that you can press in and it drops down and it gives you forward-facing USB-C ports and USB-A ports. What a simple thing. Well done, Dell. More stuff like this, please.
It's a great solution, isn't it? Because I wouldn't want to see them all the time, but I'd want to have them from time to time. I think that's really good. I think Dell monitors generally look pretty good. On the whole, they've got a reasonable batting average. Occasionally they do one with a massive camera on the top and it looks awful. But on the whole, if you just buy a normal monitor from them, I think it'd be a really good product.
I think this is great. They've got the daisy chain ability, which most modern screens have got, to be fair, where you can sort of seamlessly connect them, and you still only need one cable connection into your laptop or your desktop. So I think this is good. I think the nice slim bezels, I think it's quite a good price, to be honest. It's just under 700 quid, and in 2 months' time, Dell will have a sale on that knocks 20%, 30% off this. So I think if you're looking for an almost gaming level monitor with lots of good inputs for KVM, this is really quite a good shout.
You could buy 2 of them for the cost of one studio display.
And how old is the studio display at this point? 3.5 years?
3-4 years old.
Yeah, it's knocking on a bit. It's not where it was in terms of things. Although the panel is still very much available, isn't it?
The panel's very good. The studio display is lovely, but it's an expensive screen for what it is. It was expensive when it came out, and it's even more expensive when it's 3 years old and hasn't had a price reduction.
I mean, I have one at work, and I like the screen an awful lot. It does still occasionally frustrate me, though, that I want to plug another computer into this at the same time, and I can't.
The multiple inputs thing is probably its biggest downside. The rest of it is fantastic.
Refresh rate's a bit low. It's only 60 hertz. If you think I'm plugging in a MacBook Pro with a 120 hertz screen, why is my display only capable of 60 hertz?
My display that costs the same as my MacBook Pro.
Yeah, you could probably get a 240 hertz gaming monitor for less money. On an OLED, I bet you could.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Something I was slightly surprised about is, and we didn't cover it particularly well on the show, is that the previous Siri chief who's quite a thoughtful guy whose name completely escapes me at the moment. It's probably in the article somewhere. Was let go from where he was managing the next generation of Siri, and it was handed over to Craig Federighi's software group. I'm really surprised Siri wasn't already under Craig Federighi's software group.
I would agree with that. He's got a great batting average. He's got all the OSs under him. It seemed a bit odd that Siri, and I can kind of see it in one way. Look, you've got enough on your plate. Let's put Siri over here because it needs a lot of attention, and it's device agnostic in a way. Maybe his team get involved when they're doing the device implementation, how you're going to interact with it. But I was surprised by that. But sounds like Craig's now picking up Siri, which is great, and he's already making some major changes because before the team were told they weren't allowed to use external third-party LLMs in shipping software. They could benchmark and test and sandbox, but he's removed that constraint by the sounds of it. Basically, they're behind. They need to play catch-up, don't they?
I wonder how this will... So this is good, I think, on one level. Use the best tool for the job, and let's face it, DeepSeek or OpenAI or one of the alternatives, LLMs are definitely better than what Apple are offering. Having said that, it's going to be a harder story for the Apple Secure Enclave, private compute story that they told at WWDC.
Yeah, that is true, isn't it? It'd be interesting to see how they message it, because what they have messaged is Apple's doing it all, and we'll tell you when we're going to use ChatGPT or any other third party, but no other third parties have come forward yet.
Yeah, and Apple Intelligence asterisk except the bits that aren't.
Yeah, and it does slightly worry me, though. They're going to ship a bunch of this stuff by the end of the year, but it's only just moved to him. 6 months isn't that long, is it, for him to get a grip on it? And, well, maybe not him, but his team to have input into it and, ship a quality product out the door.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it felt rushed before. If they're really piling pressure on this team to get it done now, it's going to feel even more rushed, is my concern. And on the other end of it, I don't think there's a great, massive, compelling reason for lots of LLMs at the moment. I think we all tinker with them for the odd bit and piece, but I don't think you're going to see a return of investment on a lot of LLM stuff at this point. Anyway, it is what it is. Craig is good, as you said, at bringing things to market, so hopefully we'll see him bring better Siri along soon.
Yeah, in a way, I'd like him to go, we've missed the mark. We're going to deliver it all in 26. and here's going to be a constant delivery in 26. But let's see what the end of the year looks like, which is what this article now shows that you've just brought up, which is Apple's plans to release delayed Apple Intelligence Siri features this fall, this winter if you're in the UK. And this is all the stuff they've already pre-announced, but they are just massively behind on.
Yeah. So fall is autumn, I think, not winter. But
you're right. I'm wrong there.
So this is fair enough, but it was interesting, this sort of delayed features, and the personal context is probably the thing that was the biggest reach in terms of what Apple were offering based on that WWDC. I don't think any current LLM could do some of the stuff that they were showing there. Reach into what I'm looking at on my screen now, what's my passport number. As you said earlier at the top of the show, this is the kind of stuff Microsoft are showing in their version of Copilot thing that's coming along.
It's a bit of both, isn't it? There's personal context and on-screen awareness. You're right, Microsoft is starting to do it, and I wonder if they saw Apple do it and go, we must do that. But Apple should be able to go, you should be able to go, contact my wife, or when's my wife's birthday, and it should be able to sort it out rather than you saying, when's the person's name, and think, it should know all of those things.
Well, I can tell Siri now, with everything turned off, phone my daughter, and it will. It asks which one. So that's already there. That's not rocket science. That doesn't need an LLM to do that. You could, if you put your contact information into your contact card,
and link your family up correctly. Yeah. I've never had much success with it, but to be able to go get me all the attachments Rod sent me this week, that'd be quite cool.
Again, it shouldn't be that hard though, should it? They control the email client. You know what an attachment is. None of this is, and that's why the demo they showed at WWDC was never repeated in anything ever again, and it was vaporware, and that's a concern. That is that Apple was actually showing vaporware.
They've promised too much, and they shouldn't. They should only promise. They should only show you what they're going to ship, and Apple's normally really good at this.
Yeah, I think it's a problem for them, and we'll have to see how it goes, really. But definitely a problem for them.
We are only 2 months from WWDC 25, so it's going to be interesting to see what they announce this year.
We shall have to see. Should we do some media?
Yep.
Okay, so a couple of things with me. I've talked about it the last few shows. Paradise, I finally finished. All 8 episodes are there on Disney+. Pretty good. Good, solid bit of entertaining television. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. Probably not.
I've not watched a huge amount, but did they land it? Was it a satisfying end?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it leads on to season 2. That's fine, but it was just good, entertaining, decent drama, not ridiculous. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Most things do generally line up for the next season, don't they? But what you want is that the season you've watched is conclusive enough, I think, and satisfying. I think it's really nice when you watch something and you come away and it's like, yeah, that was good. You're satisfied. Whereas it's when you come away and you're frustrated, it's the worst.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So I think the audience and the critics bear me out in this one. It's sort of high 80s or mid 80s for a Paradise. Good show, worth watching. Just checking in with Wheel of Time as well. Not doing quite so well from the audience point of view, but the critics like it. Wheel of Time is based on a bunch of books by Robert Jordan. I'm actually, just for those, particularly for the YouTube viewers, going to very briefly show you the Wheel of Time wiki and the books that it's based on. And there are all 14 books that are in the Wheel of Time series. All of them are, at least 900 pages, I think. Maybe a couple of the prequels are a little shorter. But it's a fantastic, huge universe that Robert Jordan built here that I think Amazon, fair play to them, are actually doing a good job of turning into quite compelling television. It's a bit fast, if I wanted to be really critical, but it's not surprising it's a bit fast when you've got 14 books to try and get through. And a book per season is going to take them a while, and you've only got 8 episodes per season. So yeah, I think if you're into this kind of thing, if you like a bit of, particularly, it's extremely well acted. The young cast that they've put into this is phenomenally good. Thoroughly enjoying it. Really well done. Rosamund Pike is knocking it out of the park, as are the rest of the actors. Good scripted. The magic effect in it is probably the best magic special effect I've ever seen in anything, film or television. I include Lord of the Rings in that. I think it's really well done.
Okay, that's good. And I can get your point of them going a bit fast. Sometimes I find that when I watch an adaptation of a book, especially if it's a book you really enjoyed, and then you watch it and it's like, they've cut loads out. It's really annoyed me, but they kind of have to, don't they, to make it, I guess, a reasonable length.
Yeah, they do. So I think it's good. If you like this kind of thing, and I'm a bit worried there's not going to be a season 4 because I'm not seeing that many people watching or talking about Wheel of Time. So get on Amazon and watch Wheel of Time so I can have a season 4 and 5 and 6, please.
Help juice the numbers.
Yeah, I need the numbers to go up. I can see we have Severance season 1 in here.
Yeah, so I think I left us in that I was rewatching the whole of season 1 before I committed to season 2. I've completed season 1, and that is very satisfying, the conclusion to the end of the first season. I'd forgotten how it ended, but as soon as you start watching the final episode, and I won't spoil it for anybody, but you can see where they're going with it, and it's like, that's just really clever. It's so clever how they ended it. It's cool. I'm actually going on holiday. I think I might download some of the next season to take on the aeroplane with me. It's not very long, but I might get started on it. I'm keen to start the next season. But
you should. It's
so good.
It's a terrific show. Yeah. No, good choice. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Quite a good choice, I think, to rewatch season 1. I'm kind of regretting that I didn't in some ways.
I nearly didn't, and I thought I just can't remember enough of it. It just hadn't stuck, so I rewatched it, and a lot of it was on the treadmill, and which is quite a good place to watch things because you're focused and you're not distracted by anything because you're running. So actually, it did me really well. Yeah, I definitely want to watch season 2 again.
I'd be too busy having a heart attack, I think, if I was on the treadmill.
I was having that too, but the Severance got me through it.
Well done, Severance. Something I'm looking forward to. I don't know if you watched any of the Long Way Round, Long Way Up, Long Way Down things that Charlie Berman and Ewan McGregor did.
Sorry, I just clicked on the link and it suddenly blasted in my ears. Yes, I've watched them because they had one on Apple TV Plus when it first came out. That was Long Way Up and Down, because it started in South America and went up, didn't it? With EV bikes, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
that was fantastic.
It is fantastic. They're quite well done shows. They've been around a long time now. The very first one, they went from London to New York City, actually, the long way around. So they went right across Europe. You wouldn't be able to do that anymore. Crazy.
Why can't you do it anymore?
Because you can't take motorcycles into Russia. Or go across Ukraine. There's a war going on.
Well, you go down a little bit and around.
It's not that simple. Have a look at the map. That was the first one. Long Way Down was through Africa. They left London and they went to South Africa. Long Way Up was Ushuaia in South America up to Mexico City. And this one is going to be leaving London, going right across Europe, I think over to Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, through the Baltics and all the rest of it, and then coming back to Edinburgh or Crieff, I think, where Ewan is from. So,
cool.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. And they're doing it on old classic bikes this time, 30-year-old motorcycles. So not EVs, not big BMW Explorers, just old classic motorcycles. So I'm really looking forward to this on Apple TV+.
What could go wrong?
Everything.
Whilst you're on that, I should also mention that Race Across the World is coming back, and they're going to start at the Great Wall of China and go to the southernmost tip of India. So it'd be interesting to see, because that doesn't feel very far, but I'm guessing there's going to be some crazy checkpoints along the way.
It's quite a long way.
It's going to be cool. I can't wait. That's one of my favourite TV shows.
It's a great show. Let's do some games.
Games, yes. Love a few games. Whilst I haven't played masses, there's quite a bit for us to discuss.
There is a bit. So the first thing, you said this last week on the podcast about you're still able to buy cartridges. Some of those cartridges for the Switch 2 won't have games on them. Basically just a code to authenticate you, loaning them to someone else? How does it work?
No. There's two things here. You're going to go into a shop in your country and buy a normal boxed retail item of a game, but the game may not fit on the card, and therefore what they're going to do is just basically have a code on the card. So when you put the cartridge in your console, it would then just download it all from the internet, which is obviously a bit rubbish if you're a person who wants to own the original media and if you want to keep it for prosperity purposes because you're worried that the download might go away in 10 years' time. But they're doing that, I guess, because they want to not just have digital downloads. You know, children still want cards. They want to be able to go in a shop and buy it with their pocket money. And I think that's smart of Nintendo to do it, but I can understand the frustration of people that want the original. And all it is, like you say, is just a thing to authorize your free download because you've already paid for it. The other thing that you were just mentioning was what they are bringing is the ability to loan virtual cards out, so that if you have got a digital download, you can share the game with somebody that you're linked with, and they can have it for 2 weeks, and then it automatically comes back to you, which I'm quite looking forward to because it's coming to the old Switch, and I'd like to be able to not have the kids playing under my name, but they can go and play under their own name, but I don't want to buy the game twice because that can get quite expensive.
Yeah, particularly if they're 80 quid a pop.
Yeah, obviously Switch 2 games are going to be a lot more expensive, which makes the bundle with Mario Kart seem like a no-brainer. I'm amazed they're even doing a bundle without Mario Kart because it's like 30 quid more to get Mario Kart, which just seems like a no-brainer.
I just want to say that having your boss's name for Nintendo of America is Doug Bowser. I mean, he was obviously born to do nothing else. It's
fantastic, isn't it? And genuinely seems like a really nice guy when I've seen him do videos and things. So it's cool. I love Nintendo. I really want to Switch too.
Well, you can tell us about the next story then.
Well, we've kind of already covered this, haven't we? In that Nintendo have paused pre-orders in America. So if you hit the criteria last week on the 9th, you should have got an email from Nintendo so you could pre-order. And basically for anybody in the States, they've just paused it, which it's got to be the right thing. But they are saying the launch date of the 5th of June remains unchanged. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one all plays out. I mean, if Nintendo want to send more stock to the UK because they can't sell it in America, it's fine with me.
Well, but I guess we can buy quite a few of them, can't we? And I'm quite interested.
I want one. I'm not greedy. I just want one. I don't want to do anything nefarious with it. I just want one for myself.
Yeah, and you're not scalping it, are you? You're going to use the Switch too. So, I feel similar. I think my Switch 1 got enough use for it to justify itself, even if it's just for Mario Kart and a bit of Zelda now and then. And I played a couple of other bits and pieces on mine too. I can't remember the most recent Mario Brothers game that I bought, but Mario Brothers Wonder? That might be Mario Brothers Wonder.
That's awesome.
Is a terrific, properly thought out platforming game with whimsy, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I was a Nintendo skeptic when I was a younger man, and these days I kind of get it. I see what they do is different, and it's Nintendo, and they stick to their guns and their hardware. This is slightly less whimsical, I think, than some iterations we've seen, but it's a good, solid iteration on what the Switch was, that hopefully is better, more reliable, better screen, better refresh rate, more competent graphics, etc., etc., etc. Everything's more expensive, so it is what it is. But yeah, I'm excited for Switch 2, genuinely.
Everything's more expensive, and that's before tariffs.
Yeah, let's not get into tariffs. Right. I may be able to just go to sleep for the next 20 minutes of the next segment, I think, Chris, and you can tell us about Commandos.
It's not going to be a long review. I've only played the first level or so, but Commandos Origins has come out last week. I downloaded it. I was a bit scared by it being 25 gigs, which seemed a lot to me. So I've downloaded it. I pre-ordered it. There was this minor discount if you pre-ordered it. But for me, I love this game. So I played a lot of Commandos in the late 90s. I like the idea of it. You've got a couple of commandos on a map, and you've got to go, and it's World War II setting, and you've basically, generally with stealth, got to work your way through a map, blow something up, rescue somebody, escape, whatever it may be. And it just appealed to me, and I loved it. I'm never very good at it, but it just kept me entertained, which is what you buy a computer game for. And so this new version really builds upon the version that went before it. I think these guys also did some of the remasters, so they've played a bit with those legacy titles. And the new version is all 3D. You can zoom in and you can spin the map around, whereas the first version was very much you're looking at it from one view. And you couldn't rotate the map, even though you could walk behind buildings and things. So it's a top-down game where you're moving your commando along, and you're crawling, you're running. You've got to try and be quiet. You can click on the enemy to see what they can see, and you try and sneak up on them and knock them out or kill them, move their body, hide it. For me, I just think it's fantastic. I think this version it's a good. It's not like the original, but it's a good transition from what the original is. Here we are 25 years later. Here's what a new version could be with a proper 3D engine on it. And I think it looks really good, and I'm really enjoying it.
I'm glad that you are. It's totally not my sort of game. I don't have the patience for just stealth all the time, unfortunately. I wish I did. I'd get on a lot better with computer games if I did.
You're an all guns blazing kind of guy.
Basically, I'm terrible at tactics, and I just want to rush in and get the mission done.
Yeah, okay. No, I can see that. I just think they've done a really good job, and they've kept the detail of the maps going, because the first one was really detailed, and they've kept true to that. I just think it's really well done. Yeah, and I'm quite looking forward to playing a bit more. I'm a bit gutted I'm going on holiday tomorrow.
You'll need to try out one of the Mac emulators, Whiskey or Crossover Office, to see if you can get it running on your Mac.
I don't take computers when I go on holiday generally.
What if you need one? This is the thing. Let's not get into that. That could be a whole main story at some
I generally
point.
take an iPad for media consumption, and then if I have to do any work, I have that with me. But
You think an iPad's a computer, though? Come on.
For what I need while I'm on holiday, it will do perfectly for me.
So, can you play Warcraft 2 on your iPad?
No.
Oh,
So,
tell us about that.
Well, while I was rooting around on my PC and downloading this 25 gig file, I thought, I'll just fire up everything else, make sure I've updated all the drivers, because I hadn't used my gaming computer for a while. And I go into Battle.net app on my computer, which I used to use to play StarCraft Remastered and StarCraft 2, and I see they've done a remastered version of Warcraft 2. I couldn't believe my luck, and it's £12.50, bargain. This is a very old game. It's back from 95, so 30 years old, as we talked about last week. And basically what they've done is just done a very simple remastered version of it. All the graphics and sprites have been updated. All the menus have been redone. And I insta-purchased this and played level 1. Well, I'm very much looking forward to replaying this. And it's both versions. You've got the original game and I was going to say DLC, but obviously it was expansion pack back then because you went and bought a separate disc. But for £12.50, that's 2 quality games. Obviously it's of an era, but for me, for a bit of nostalgia, well worth the money. And
as well as Warcraft 2, we've got Warcraft 1.
They've done Warcraft 1 as well. This one's only £9, much older game. I had less affinity for this, but I thought I'd get it anyway, so I picked that up too. So I've got lots of remastered stuff to play too. So it's a pretty good year for me for games.
You've done all right, I think, haven't you? You've done all right. I played these games when I was much younger, Warcraft 1 and 2. I played a lot more Warcraft 3, I think, because that was that I had a bit more time at that point to do it. And Warcraft 3 very quickly came on to World of Warcraft, which is what everybody still plays to this day. Massively multiplayer online role-playing game as it is. It's amazing that Blizzard, isn't it? Yeah, have managed to keep us going as long as they have from the humble beginnings that are Warcraft 1 and 2.
They've done all right, haven't they?
And they always had a sense of humour. I think that, if you kept clicking on your units in this, they got increasingly annoyed at you for clicking on them. It was probably a programmer's joke, but I did appreciate that. And yeah, I guess fair enough. I think you can probably do better these days in terms of real-time strategy games. Ixion that I talked about last week, for example, is a lot deeper than something like this. But for brain out fun with a little bit of tactics, I don't think you could beat an old Warcraft game.
I think for me, in my circle of friends, we played World of Warcraft 2 to death. We played it a lot, and we all owned a copy of it. And I think that's why I've just got quite a bit of nostalgia for it. And I'm going to sink some time into it, and I'll be quite happy with it.
Quite right too. Never be ashamed of the games that you play, said the Call of Duty player that's unable to think about tactics.
Fair enough.
Shall we do a main show?
Let's do it.
Right, I'm not sure what order to present these links to you in, people of the internet who watch on YouTube, but what we want to talk about is the Framework Laptop 12. So I almost bought a Framework 13 probably about this time last year. I got very Linux curious. I was super into it. I still am Framework curious. Their gimmick in Framework is repairable computing. So they make a computer where they sell all the parts for the Framework Laptop 13 is now in its 3rd generation, where if you'd bought the original Framework laptop from, I think, 4 years ago at this point, you can buy a new main board for it, you can put in the latest chip, you can swap out Intel for AMD. Everything in the original laptop you can buy a new part for or upgrade it to something better. So a good example is they released a higher resolution, higher refresh rate screen, 120 hertz screen. Chris, imagine that in your basic level laptop.
That sounds ideal.
Even the M4 MacBook Air doesn't do that. The point is, it's replaceable. If you want to put more RAM in it, you can. You want to put a bigger SSD, you can. If you crack your screen, you can just buy a new screen and replace it yourself. And the laptops come apart, and they've got QR codes everywhere that will give you a little run-through video to how to fix anything that you break on one. Fantastic idea. You pay a little bit more for the consequence of that, because obviously they're not thin and super glued together as lots of laptops are these days. Even it sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole. I went looking at Lenovo laptops, which are ThinkPads, which are also iconic repairable laptops that IBM made and then sold to Lenovo. They're all glued together these days as well. The ThinkPad Carbon X1 is a glued together laptop.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's just where they're all going, isn't it? They're all glued together. You've actually got me a bit Framework curious, I think, because I'm seeing it with my car a little bit. I bought a 20-year-old car, and I've bought a new head unit for it so I can have CarPlay. I've just bought a reversing camera that I'm going to fit for it. I bought a new steering wheel for it. I've kind of come back around. I think I've enjoyed buying things and they just work. But then a few years later, when you've got maybe a bit of money spare, you don't necessarily want to throw it all out and start again, do you? You want to tweak it or modify it. And so it's great to see Framework doing this. I just hope they can make it work financially and they stay around long enough for people then to get the benefit. Say if you bought a laptop today, 4 years time, actually I love this laptop, but I wish I had another SSD in it, or actually I will plump for the new motherboard, but I'll keep the screen. The screen's fine. I can really see the benefit of doing that.
Yeah, and they seem to be doing things right. So for a long time, their only product was the Framework Laptop 13. Then they released the Framework Laptop 16, which is actually the first laptop I think you could buy with dedicated removable graphics cards. So if you did want to use it for gaming, you could buy their bigger laptop and swap in and out the video card. And that's amazing for a laptop. And even the top case is reformatable in that if you want your keyboard centered and you want LED pads on each side of it, you can do that. If you don't want an LED because it's a gaming laptop, you can swap one of those out and you can put in a numeric number pad on the right hand side of your keypad instead. If you want your trackpad centered off to the left because you're a gamer and you don't want it in the center, you could do that, and you could modularize how the outside of the laptop looked. So that was their second product. The third product then, which they announced at their event a couple of months back, was the Framework Desktop, which we talked about on the show. Tiny little computer, sort of very Mac Pro-esque, with a new generation AMD chips inside of it that would give you the sort of highest end possible power in a desktop with some of this repairable stuff. You'd need to swap in and out the main board because obviously the chips are very not as modular as many. Intel and AMD have learned from Apple, and they make it more difficult to swap components in and out as well. But that was the third one. And then at the same time, they announced the Framework Laptop 12, which is what we really want to talk about today, which is their small, inverted commas, cheap laptop, because as discussed, when you make things to be repairable, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be cheap, and the company still needs to make a living. So I understand why they're not cheap, but this product was announced on Tuesday, a 12-inch laptop that folds over the top over the back, so you can use it in like a tablet format as well, and it's come out of the gate at $550. £550. And that doesn't sound that expensive to me for a product that has all sort of components that we've talked about in the 13 and 16-inch laptops, that has all user replaceable parts, that works with a stylus, has the module system that Framework does where you can swap in and out the ports on the bottom of it. I think this is a pretty compelling device.
It is compelling. The one minor asterisk is the base price does come with a hard drive, because you can bring your own, which is great. They support that too. So it's about another 50 quid to get a hard drive in it, or £100, sorry. So it's just worth noting that. But it's a great device. I think it's really good. It's the same sort of money as a Mac Mini. It's fantastic, isn't it? That you could get obviously a base Mac Mini or an entire laptop. Really competitive price, and really good if you bought it for a child who is maybe doing a bit with computers. But you have it's always hard when you're buying something for children because you don't know how much they're going to use something. And if they find they're using it a lot, you can go and buy some more components for it later on and upgrade it. I think it's really good. And I like the offering. I like the design language. I think it looks really smart. I like all of it. And you can get it in fun and exciting colours.
Yeah, colours. Imagine that.
Colours, not just black and grey. So you can have bubblegum, which I'm not sure I would personally go for bubblegum. But there's lavender. The sage look kind of cool. I quite like the look of that.
I don't mind. I just like the fact that you can choose something, and if you want to, you can then get matching docking ports, the USB-C, USB-A, Ethernet adapters in another.
Or you can have them whatever colour you want, and they don't have to match, and they can look completely, odd, I guess, or made to not look right. So I think that's cool.
And the thing is, it doesn't come with an SSD, but it's very easy to fit one. You might have one lying around. You could buy one at some Amazon sale or something for not a lot of money at some point. You can upgrade it when you want to. Unlike if we had gone and bought M4 MacBook Airs, that decision you make for the amount of RAM in it and the amount of SSD in it is set for the life of the device. If you had bought this for a child and then the child doesn't want it for whatever reason and you decide to use it for your work and you need a 4 terabyte SSD in it, you can just slam one in and off you go. I think that flexibility is really what makes these devices quite compelling. And the repairability, that it is very easy through a couple of screws. They all come with a screwdriver. You can flip the top off it and you can fix the thing. I just think it's genuinely quite exciting to see computing like this again. It's almost we've gone full circle back to the day where I do want to get inside my devices and I want to be able to swap bits in and out of them.
Yeah, I generally think it is good. And like I say, I think now I've got a bit older, I actually want to keep something and not just rip and replace, because it's not the right solution, is it? I'm very tempted to look at, when I get a gaming computer replacement, the framework desktop for me would be ideal. It's not too big. I can just spec for what I need today, and then hopefully in a few years from now, buy a new card for it and off I go.
I think this is great. And one of the things I particularly like about the little video, so featured on screen as we've been talking has been Nirav Patel, who's the CEO of the company. In the background, you've not only got a classic Mac, so obviously they've got a lot of kudos and respect for where technology has come from, unsurprisingly. But do you remember this? This is a one laptop per child, an OLPC, which was designed for computing in Africa. It came with a mesh networking system. So if you bought a couple for your village, because you wouldn't have cellular Wi-Fi reception, you'd still be able to network with the other computers in the village. It was an amazing initiative. And I just think that's such a lovely little nod to the past of where computing sort of aspired to cheap computing for education. And one of the things about the pre-order for this Framework Laptop 12 is if you dump down another chunk of change to be part of the hacking network, you get bumped up the queue. And that hacking network is to give cheap Framework laptops to children. I like what this company is doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is really good to see that they're trying to do the right thing. I guess they've got a good moral compass. A lot of tech companies don't necessarily have that.
Yeah, I got to say that if this was something that I could just have tomorrow at $549, £499, I'd probably just bought one. We'll see what happens when the pre-orders come out, but this was almost an insta-buy for me, I got to say.
Wow, okay.
Honestly, there's just something, I find it quite exciting. I have very fond memories of my very first MacBook Air that was, I think, only a 12-inch, 11-inch device. It was super portable. Was it 11-inch? Yeah, the very first one was 11-inch and 13-inch, right?
I think it was just 13, the very first one, because it had the little pop-down door on the side.
Second generation.
The second gen bought 11 and 13. I had two of those 11-inch ones, and I loved it because I docked it at work and just had it in clamshell mode. But that 11-inch one, it was so portable. You just take it everywhere with you, which is why I've gone for the smaller iPad now, because I just chuck it in my bag.
And this is a little chunkier because it's actually got a screen that folds back on itself and you can use a stylus or not. But there's just something about this that harkens back to that sort of more exciting era of computing. Things are great now. You've got very long-lasting batteries and, decent performance. But this is still going to give you good battery, good performance, in a potentially more exciting shape. So I'm all over this. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, I think it's cool. I'm with you. And like I say, I'm very, very tempted to order the desktop, which comes out at some point in the future. But I don't have a laptop at the moment. Well, I have my iPad. So you never know. If ever I need a laptop, this could be an answer.
Let's just hope the tariffs don't kill Framework.
I completely agree with you there, because it's great to see a company making a splash that isn't one of the big corporates and they're trying to muscle their way in. I think these devices would also be good for corporations, because if you buy them and somebody breaks a port, we just replace the port. You don't need to replace the whole device or buy the expensive support. I think that's really good.
Yeah, and just to finish the thought, and again, more for the YouTube viewers, is if you look at sort of their store where you can go to pick up other bits and pieces for the laptops. So if you do want to replace a mainboard, for example, they're also supporting RISC-V, which we talked about briefly in this podcast as well. But if you want a desktop mainboard, it's $799 for a new desktop mainboard. As we said, that's the all-in-one piece that you wanted. But if you were looking for a replacement for your laptop 13, you can put the very latest mainboard into the 13-inch one and I flipped off the page just as I was doing it, for £449. And that's your laptop good to go in, like an entirely fresh laptop. You don't need to change the keyboard. You don't need to change anything else. 7 or 8 screws and 20 minutes work, and you've got an entirely new computer. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Sorry, I've just got my eye on a wasp that's decided to enter my shed. I completely agree with you. I think it's really good and a lot more reusable computing, especially if you've got a computer you really like, but you just want to maybe make it a little bit quicker. It is like the good old days.
It is. Shall we do app of the week?
Go for it.
I don't have an app of the week because I couldn't find an app. I have, however, I'm verging into your territory. I've got a thing of the week. Hopefully Chris doesn't get stung by the wasp while this is going on. I made my first ever order from AliExpress. Have you ever ordered anything from AliExpress?
Largely for my children. AliExpress is really good for footballs, is it Pokemon cards maybe? And I can't remember what else we've ordered from it, but random things for my kids.
So you have. I hadn't, but I saw a thing on Hot UK Deals it was £45 at that point. One of those USB screens that you can extend your desk onto. It was £45. It was a 13-inch. Is it 13-inch? It'll say on yours. 14.1 inch screen that's powered by USB-C. It also has HDMI. It also has a couple of other ports if you want it. It has built-in speakers, and it's a touch screen. So what I was thinking was, this could be quite handy for those times when you're out working with a laptop, you just want to extend your screen for 45 quid, what have you got to lose? Or when you're going on holiday and you just want something else to plug your phone into, and I tried it, I can plug my iPhone in this, USB-C to USB-C, turn it on its side, and I've got a full screen monitor on my iPad. So if you're lying in a hotel bed and they haven't given you a very good TV, you get something like this with you. Or a plan for my Raspberry Pi down the line is if I do turn it into some sort of home assistant, manage the light bulbs and all that kind of stuff, it's a touchscreen. So I could mount a Raspberry Pi on the back of it, have it there on the back, and then have a touchscreen interface to a web browser or something like that. At a fairly central location, so manage the heating, turn lights on and off, do all that kind of stuff for not a lot of money. So I just think it's a good gadget to start with, and I was really impressed with it. And it came in 4 days from China.
Yeah, it's bonkers, isn't it? I've had mixed with that. Some things come really quick. Some things take a little bit longer. Is it HDMI? Like what connection do you have?
Yeah, I've got HDMI. I've got USB-C. I've got all of the things. What I do need to get for it is a carry case, actually, because it just came in a cardboard box with a screen protector. So I think if you are going to stick it in a bag with a laptop, and there you go.
Yeah, it's very thin.
It's very thin. My camera's moving around, and it has an integral kickstand on the back as well.
Yeah, that is cool. What you could do is use this with your Mac Mini and have a portable Mac.
Yeah, it's an option, isn't it? But yeah, it's nice. It's a good enough screen. Could be a little bit brighter, but what am I expecting for 45 quid?
Yeah, and at the moment it's 56 quid delivered, which isn't that bad either.
Well, no, it's not much more than when I bought it, is it? So, and well done, AliExpress. I'm really impressed with how quickly it came. Wasn't Amazon. I don't know if it's any better than Amazon, but it wasn't Amazon.
Yeah, that's fair. I can recommend it. It's great, AliExpress, for kids' pocket money, I find, because their money does go a bit further. And it is mad that for a £5 you can have a football shipped from all the way around the world to your front door.
Be careful what you buy, folks, because things like flash drives and stuff like that off AliExpress probably not a great idea.
Agreed.
Thing of the week.
I've gone with a book, and it's related. I'm reading Bill Gates' book called Source Code, which is about how he started out in life, how he was at school, and how he got into programming. It's a really good book, and I'm very much enjoying it. I'm halfway through. And I would recommend. So there you go. It's also available on Audible if you'd rather listen to it.
I'm a bit mixed on Bill Gates. On one hand, he obviously absolutely changed the computing world. We wouldn't be where we were without Bill Gates. I think the Bill and Melinda Gates, if it's still called that because I know they're divorced now, Foundation has done incredible work for things like doing stuff about malaria in America. So quite philanthropic, but at the same time he's there in the background, doing all the stuff for Trump and all the rest of it, as are all the other tech titans. So, yeah, interesting character. Very much a feature of the early days of computing, and he didn't get on very well with Steve Jobs. So
Yeah, I was just more interested to see, and it is quite interesting. He basically said he was a nightmare child, and wasn't very obedient, and riled his parents. I was just interested to see how did he go from being a kid to setting up Microsoft, and it just, I don't know why, just something that I saw in the bookshop and thought I fancy that, and I bought it. So and I'm reading it and would recommend.
Fair enough. Titan of the computing industry. Cool. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
Yeah, I think so. So if anybody wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot. He's also on Blue Sky, and he's at g5maniac at bsky.social. I'm on Mastodon, and I'm at _CJP at mastodon.social. You can watch it on YouTube by going to our website and clicking on the link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.